What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James of Midhunter Comics, and I apologize, I'm a little sick today. So what a good transition into 10 covers that you'd have to be sick in order to actually enjoy. This list is subjective, and I'm sure I will be missing some pretty ugly ones, so if you know them, drop them in the comments down below. I'm going to kick us off with the Robin Volume 3. It was called Cry of the Huntress. It was a Huntress-Robin tie-in, and DC was really pushing to get people to buy this thing, and you can tell because they did a very early attempt at some lenticular covers, and for those of you who have ever held these in person, they don't really work that great. It's kind of a novel idea because it's not your typical lenticular. You actually pull a tab and it gives you a different image. However, it looks kind of stupid, isn't that cool, and was quite more expensive than the main covers. I guess a lot of people swung for it because whenever I find this in the wild, I never find the main covers. I always find these versions. We got to talk about Ms. Mystic #1. This is a continuity comics entry here, and it is one of those ones that looks absolutely stupid from the naked eye. Now, to be fair, this is one of those stare at the cover long enough and you'll start to see what it's supposed to look like type of covers, which bonus points for creativity, it's kind of cool. But one thing they didn't think about is most people, when you go comic book shopping, aren't staring at one spot on a comic for 60 seconds in hopes that the cover will look better. Usually you get a quick glance and it's either dope looking or yikes. This falls into yikes. Next up is going to be Protectors #5 from Malibu Comics. Now, if you missed yesterday's video, there was a comic called Jab #3 in which they shot a bullet through every issue. It was pretty funny. It actually worked. That was pretty cool. This one, they had lasered a bullet through, but what doesn't work about this cover is it's so busy, you don't even really notice the hole until you open the pages, and they didn't really write it into the story, unlike Jab 3. So there's this random hole in every issue that doesn't really make any sense to the story. Yeah, that was a little bit of a dud. If they thought that through a little bit better, it would have brought it together, but they didn't, so oh well. Next up, we got to talk about some failed die-cut covers. How about Neil Adams' Crazy Man #1? Now, when you think Neil Adams, you're going to think iconic, beautiful covers. Well, not necessarily all the time. To be fair, it's not just the die cut. I think this is a little bit of an odd cover for Neil as a whole. It's the fact that the die cut's cut to his face. It's just a weird, ugly cover of a bunch of people, DC editorials included, that did not bring their A game. The next one's going to be possibly one of the most 90s covers you've ever seen. It is a goofy one. It's Eclipso, The Darkness Within. Man, I really did not love all the Eclipso stuff going around that year. Well, this particular cover is the cherry on top. They actually include a very fake-looking ruby or sapphire or whatever stone on the front of the comic, and it looks incredibly cheap and McDonald's toyish because the story's not so great. Coupled with the goofiness, datedness look of this cover, it winds up on a lot of lists of worst covers from the time. Next up, we're going to go with Amazing Spider-Man 400. Now, the shame about this one, unlike some of the ones from this list, is this is a fantastic story. It is actually one of my favorite Amazing Spider-Man stories from Volume 1. I'm not kidding. It's a very bittersweet and tragic yet understanding natural progression story of Aunt May and Peter, and the relationship is wonderful in this. And it sounds like a cool idea. Let's make an embossed gravestone cover for Aunt May. Well, that sounds great, only they just didn't put enough detail into it, or I'm not really sure what happened. It wasn't prominent enough. So basically, it looks like a blank tombstone unless you're holding it up in the exact right light. You can get a different cover or the newsstand edition where you see how the cover should have looked, but the actual embossed edition just comes out incredibly flat looking, which ironically, it's supposed to be topographical, not flat. You can't talk about ugly covers without mentioning Action Comics 695. This is one of those failed covers. I'm not entirely sure what they were actually going for, which definitely puts it securely on this list. So it's a chrome-enhanced cover, but I'm not entirely sure what's going on. I think it's supposed to be Superman's reflection showing in the robotic armor, but honestly, my guess is as good as yours. I'm not sure. It's clearly supposed to be a reflective surface metal looking villain, but it just doesn't come across. And it sort of looks like two cover ideas that kind of got merged into one, It doesn't look natural at all. That Superman in the middle looks like it's not supposed to be there. It is a goofy one, and if you've ever held it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The next one is going to be one that starts off from a good place. They definitely thought of a good idea, and that is by an indestructible cover. A cover that doesn't tear, it's not going to have those spine ticks very easily. The problem is they put so much work in making the covers of a better material that didn't rip so easily that they forgot to focus on the actual art, and the price tag was considerably higher than what most people were able to pay. So you're left with basically a bunch of copies to this day that are, yeah, they're like near mint or mint, but nobody wants them because they're kind of goofy looking. We've got to talk about hybrids, another continuity comics entry here, and this one they were trying to match what happened with Blood Strike #1, where you would rub away the blood from the cover. The only problem with that is it didn't really work that well. So what happened is you had a cover devoted to half of the screen of some sort of texture that you really couldn't really see what was going on. One of the main differences is on Bloodstrike #1, it would still look kind of cool, and on this one, not only if you even got it to work, it just didn't look cool. Big orange blotch cover? Alrighty. Alright folks, the last one I'm going to give you is one you probably haven't heard of too much, and it's one that I found a year ago in the dollar bin, and I actually brought it up to the counter just to get a good laugh with the shop owner. Yes, it was that bad. This is Punisher War Journal 64. Now, from the front cover, the particular art style is just so messy, and quite honestly, was it just inked wrong? I cannot tell what is going on this cover. And they have it as a die cut where there's a hole in the book and you open it up to show Punisher with a gun aimed at your head. Now that imagery is kind of interesting on that first page, but on the cover, it doesn't really make sense. It almost seems like they just said, hey, we're going to randomly cut a zigzag in your book and there's nothing you can do about it. And I know that it doesn't match with your front cover at all, but it's happening. Deal with it. I'm telling you, next time you see issue 64, open it up and compare the first page to the front cover. There was not a cohesive thought at all, and you're left with what already would have been a kind of an ugly cover made much worse and more confusing. What did I miss? We didn't even mention a single one of those hollow foil card covers. So let me know down at the bottom, what are some of the most ugliest covers that you can think of? Let's have a little fun, and I'll see you at the next video. Keep on hunting. Make sure to come down to Sentiment Depot Antiques and Collectibles, where I'm set up with all of my comics, located at 238 West Delaware Ave, Pennington, New Jersey. Open every day except for Monday and Tuesday. Enjoy 10% off from Wednesday to Friday. See you there.